everyone. Jennifer Gray, partner at Keenan Bean. We're here tonight on behalf of Biomed Realty, which owns approximately 42 acres of property on Sawmill River Road called Ardsley Park. We thank you for your time tonight and for the opportunity to present a concept for the redevelopment of the Ardsley Park site. Currently, as you know, the site is improved with several buildings and parking areas. But with the departure of Biomed's largest tenant there, Accorda, the buildings have remained largely vacant for some time, thus prompting our investigation into an alternate approach for the site. So at this time, we're analyzing the potential for redevelopment of the property for a warehouse and distribution use. To that end, JMC has prepared some conceptual plans for a multi-tenanted warehouse building of approximately 280,000 square feet, and that's what we'd like to discuss with you tonight. I am joined tonight by a portion of our project team who's going to walk us through a brief presentation. We do have a PowerPoint to present to you, and then we'll open it up for some questions. We understand that you've allotted 30 minutes of time for us tonight, and we appreciate that, and we were respectful of your time, so we're going to try to keep it to that. So joining me tonight is Sal Zinno, Senior Vice President of Development for Biomed, also Diego Villarreal from JMC, Project Engineer. In a minute, I'm going to turn it over to Sal to go through some of the PowerPoint presentation to talk about who is Biomed, briefly put the site into context with its surroundings, and talk about the proposed project. And then I'll turn it over to Diego to talk a little bit about some of the preliminary traffic studies that we have performed so far. We do believe that the project is going to result in some real benefits for the town, including increased property tax revenue with no impacts to the school district, obviously, for a warehouse building, a reduction in the peak hour traffic as compared to reoccupancy of the existing buildings for the office use, and obviously construction jobs, and also construction of a modern, energy-efficient building as opposed to the older, less efficient buildings that are there currently. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sal to walk you through the site and talk about the project in general.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, everyone, for taking the time to meet with us tonight. I think everyone is roughly familiar with the location. This is right off of Sawmill River Road, so I won't spend a lot of time on this slide. If we could just flip to the second one, we'll share some details about the site. So you're looking at a few buildings. We have actually two or four buildings, depending on how you look at it. We refer to them by two different addresses and an existing central utility plant. There were some buildings up at the high side of the site adjacent to that Crown Castle antenna that's shown there. Those were demolished shortly after we acquired the site, roughly in 2011. So we still have those four buildings. And as Jennifer mentioned, were previously occupied by Accorda not too long ago. Accorda vacated, and so the campus at this point is completely empty. And we just flip to the next slide. So the buildings have a long history. They were lab buildings for many, many years. They've reached a point now where they're really no longer viable as lab buildings. We'll touch a little bit on the marketing efforts that we've taken to attempt to fill these buildings. They're at a point now, just given changes in code, the condition of the buildings, the requirements of tenants today, we just don't see a path to turning these back into viable lab buildings. And that's really one of the factors that's driven us to look at alternative uses. So the leasing history. This has been it's been a long road here. We spent a lot of days down here, a lot of hours, a lot of weeks down here, talking to a lot of potential tenants. We've had a few tours on the campus over the years, and again, like I said, Accorda has not occupied the entire campus. They only occupied a portion of the campus. So we've been attempting to really lease the vacant building since 2011. And this is what we do. We do focus on life science real estate. So I think, we've tried our best and have not had success with leasing the existing building. So again, that's kind of what has driven us to look at these alternative uses. So the proposed site, you can see here again, Sawmill River on the bottom of the page. That's a throughway up on the the top part of the page. You're looking at what is a 280,000 square foot warehouse building with the associated parking. At this point, this is again a concept. We do not have a tenant identified for the project, but we would expect that given the size of it, that it would probably accommodate multiple tenants, maybe 2 to 3 tenants, depending on the demand, of course. So, as Jennifer mentioned, this is a much different building than any other lab buildings. The energy use intensity is much lower than even what we have on campus today, not the max density scenario. But we would keep the Crown Castle antenna. That's, again, up on the north side of the site. We would add parking, trailer spaces, and then access. We can touch on that a little bit more, but, of course, it would be off Sawmill. And then fiscal impacts. So this is obviously, it's a much different building, again, than what we have there today. We expect that roughly based on some comps that we studied in the town, that tax revenues could increase by a maximum of 40%. That's beyond the existing tax revenue that's
What are you
on site today.
paying now?
So I could research. I have my notes. I could tell you what that is. I think we're on the order of a million and change, I believe, right, is the one
so
you have there for Jennifer?
The existing assessment is just about 49 million, and the taxes paid in 2022 was about 1.6.
1.6, thank you.
Yeah, and we're projecting about a $69 million assessment in the proposed condition with a tax revenue of 2.2 million. Obviously, majority of that to go to the school district, and then the town and the county, obviously.
So, and then beyond that, we have obviously the jobs, construction jobs, long-term jobs, and relatively low burden on the municipal services. No additional students, minimal utility usage, minimal demand for fire and life safety. So now we're going to talk a little bit. I know traffic is a topic that everyone would like to get into, so I'm going to turn it over to Diego to talk a little bit about traffic.
Sure. Thank you.
Particularly left turnout.
Yeah. So just for the record, again, Diego Villarreal with JMC. We're the planning and engineering consultant for the applicant. And we have worked with Biomed on this property, again, since they purchased it back in 2011. We assisted with the demolition of the existing buildings. We also helped with the connector building construction and some of the other improvements that have been done on the property. So in addition to working with them on developing the site plan, knowing that some of these other components are going to be a topic of discussion even early on, as early as we are right now. Sometimes we won't prepare these studies until later on in the process. We started looking at traffic and potential traffic impacts, understanding the use that is being proposed. So we went out there in June, did some preliminary counts in the area and the surrounding intersections, studying from the Lawrence Street intersection all the way down to Jackson Avenue, really focusing on the frontage of the property and especially the turn lanes in and out of the property itself. There are 4 curb cuts on the property right now. That's all being consolidated into 2. You'd continue to maintain the northern entrance and then the southern entrance on the property. Those 2 curb cuts would remain, and then the 2 that are more centrally located on the property would be eliminated, so we're reducing it to those 2 locations. On the slide, you'll see there's 2 bullet points there. The first thing that we did look at was the trip generation characteristics based on 280,000 square feet of a warehouse use. What are the traffic characteristics associated with that? How much trip will it generate on a daily basis? And again, there is some variation depending on who the final user is at the end of the day, but regardless of the user and the type of use, it will be a reduction from the amount of traffic that's generated from the fully occupied office building that's on the property right now.
But not a reduction of traffic as it exists now because it isn't occupied.
Well, it is unoccupied right now, so if we look at the current conditions on the property, it's basically 0 at this point. But obviously, Accorda was in that building just a short time ago, and when you look at it as an operating office building, and when you do a comparison between the 2, there is a reduction in the potential vehicle traffic.
Was that since the Rivertown Square
Oh, yeah.
built?
Yeah, so Rivertown Square was a project that we worked on, and that's been constructed for several years now. Accorda just left in 2022, was when they fully vacated the building, but Rivertown Square was several years back.
But at that time, it wasn't fully inhabited, correct?
How much did Corda occupying the building was pretty much all of what is there right now.
Oh, I thought you said since 2011, there's
That's when
no
it-
full occupancy.
There's been, yeah.
Yeah, that's accurate. I think the campus was probably somewhere on the order of 65 to 75% occupied when Accorda was there. So there was always some vacancy, some static vacancy.
Okay.
So there is definitely a delta, but again, you can reoccupy the building today. We've applied for building permits, you could reoccupy it for an office use. So that's what we kind of use as our baseline assumption for comparative purposes. Regardless of that, we're still looking at the operations at the driveways. We're still looking at the operations there. It's not always about the delta, especially with the proposed driveways. I believe the comment was already made about left turns and how do you do that in front of the driveways and the different things. So in addition to just looking at...
And also whether or not DOT allows you to do a left turn.
100%,
right?
yeah.
Have you spoken to the DOT at all?
We've had some preliminary discussions with them because obviously there's truck traffic associated with this. So we want to make sure we fully vet the truck traffic usage along the property. So we ran the concept by them. We showed them a preliminary plan. There was some feedback from them as far as some preliminary comments, but there was nothing precluding us from moving forward. It was something they obviously can entertain. There's enough room along the frontage of the property to do some necessary improvements that would be done. For instance, you do have to provide a left turn into this property, one that doesn't exist right now. So there would be some widening along Sawmill River Road where you have to widen it to provide a left turn in, and then you are permitted to allow left turns out onto Sawmill River Road, and it works from an operational standpoint, and it works from a geometry standpoint. We're able to configure it in a fashion where it's permitted. So we did prepare a conceptual plan, and again, it's important the left turns out. Because of the warehouse-type use, we have to look at the proximity to the highways. You have the 87 ramp that's just to the north of us. It's about a mile north, or you have to go to the south down towards Tuckahoe Road. So making a left turn out of the facility is important from that aspect
And
of
where
it. So the
would-
necessary improvements would go along with whatever's done for the project.
Where would the widening occur, on the east side or the west side of the street?
Actually, can we go back to the site plan real quick? So you can see on the plan, and it's a little bit small right now, but you'll see on the left-hand side, that's Plan North. That would be the main entrance in that location, and that's where the widening would occur. You can see it's already contemplated on the plan. There's a left turn pocket lane that's being designed so you can enter the property in that location, and that's where a majority of the improvements would be permitted. The driveway to the south would be limited potentially. That's going to be subject to discussion with DOT. When you have driveways on the property, they like to keep one driveway fully operational and then another driveway sometimes
So you're
limited.
saying north-south and the entrance
So to the
into
left.
property, but you mentioned widening the Sawmill River Road.
Correct.
So that, just thinking of it east-west.
Yeah, so
which
if you
is-
imagine, instead of north-south, let's just imagine looking at the plan. To the left, that is to the north. So Sawmill River Road runs in a north-south direction, so just to the left is north. So Sawmill River Road would be widened in the east-west direction. It would be made wider in that area there to allow for the left turn lane. So when a car is
Right,
coming
but you're taking
down,
the property.
our
from-
property.
That's my question.
Yeah, we're going to widen towards our side of the property. We have frontage. There is adequate right-of-way width. There's enough room along our frontage to widen on that side. We wouldn't start pushing in the other direction because of right-of-way constraints and things like that.
This would be more like a FedEx, that's what you're looking at, the type of,
It depends.
But
I
that's
think
the concept.
That is a potential use, and then there's other types of warehouse use that might be a little less intensive from a traffic
could
standpoint.
you give us, so we have a better idea, like what other potential uses, could you?
From a potential
As a concept,
users?
yeah,
Or
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say. The warehouse use, again, there's a big difference. You could have a furniture warehouse user, or you can have a fulfillment center like a warehouse for FedEx or UPS. So the variation can be, it's different. But from a traffic standpoint, we'll look at a couple of different alternatives to try to address that.
And how many employees would be working there? And how many, trucks would be driving up and down Sawmill River Road? on a typical, say, day, and around what time?
So, you want to address
Yeah,
the
go-
first
yeah,
part?
so
No,
the-
go ahead.
Yeah, on the employee question, we've estimated approximately 250 full-time
Employees.
employees on site, yes. Yeah.
And how many went a quarter, and what was like? the
You know,
num-
That's a good question, but typically, what's up? 700, yeah, I'd say typically we think of laboratory space as roughly 3 employees per 1,000 square feet. So, that probably aligns with maybe about 700, maybe a little bit less.
So you have 700 employees, and now it would be down to 250. And
Correct.
So, and in terms of the traffic, I'm wondering in terms of any estimates about how many trucks would be driving up and down the road
Sure.
each day, and it would be interesting to have sort of a comparison, what you're proposing, and when you have the biotech, bio companies, how many vehicles traveled up and down the road.
And if I may, questions too?
Yeah.
And full disclosure, I live around the corner off Jackson Avenue, so I'm predisposed to ask questions. Okay. So you're talking about you're talking about trucks. We have problems in the maintenance of that road to begin with. So now we're talking about heavier vehicles. While you said you took the study from Jackson to Lawrence Street, I travel along that road quite a bit, I must admit, not just Jackson, but on Sawmill River Road. My mother was living off of Sawmill River Road for a number of years. And Lawrence Street, that turn there is an impossibility. Not that any trucks would be coming from
yeah.
Sawmill River Parkway, but I don't know there are people routinely who will make, because traffic backs up on that short road at a long light, they will routinely go into the oncoming traffic as it is. And I just see that happening even more with the backup created by having additional truck traffic on the road. It's already very risky, dangerous situation at the intersection of Lawrence Street and Sawmill River Road. So those are two concerns. A question, please explain why you are looking at warehouse tenants as opposed to, even if it can't be biomedical research companies, why not other kinds of industry or corporate entities?
You want to jump, just before you jump into that question, just to answer the second part of the question that was asked before about truck traffic. We can provide more information. Again, a lot of that has to do with the actual user on the property.
Well,
so
that was actually a thought that I had, too.
100%. It's specific to the warehouse use. So some might have a little bit more of an intensive truck traffic use. Other ones will not. When you have some of these traditional warehouse uses, the traffic generation associated with it is very low. The ones that you see more.
Not if you stand on Warehouse Lane.
But if you're looking at warehouses that are fulfillment centers like FedEx's and Amazon's and things like that, that's where you'll start to see the higher traffic generation volumes. But again, still, it's less than a fully occupied. I know it's not fully occupied today, but it's still less than what a fully occupied office building would be. With that being said, I can put together a range of truck traffic based on the different uses that could be put in the warehouse use to address that comment, and we could look at how many vehicles are generated and how many truck trips are associated
And
with
I could
that.
see, like in Ardsley, you don't want this area to become like Sawmill River Road in Elmsford, where it just becomes a lot of traffic, truck traffic, and it really would impact the quality of life for downtown Ardsley, as well, just following up on your comments. So that's something that, and it would be interesting right now, there's trucks have used the campus in the past. So maybe when you make your, presentation, you could, highlight the existing truck traffic and then give us sort of an estimate what the difference would be.
Right, yeah, and just to follow up on Diego's point, we don't have a specific tenant at this time. So, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what the traffic would be, but as we go through a review process, we can vet all of that out.
But when
That
we-
was the
we-
first
We can
question I
study-
wrote to you.
Yeah, we could study all
But
the
also
different
when
scenarios.
if we have to approve something, it's not going to be for the specific tenant, it's going to be saying
For
we want
use.
warehouse,
Correct.
so you could say, oh, we're going to have like a furniture store that gets practically no traffic, and then 6 months after you're in, then they could say, oh, it's going to be, a gigantic, I'm saying.
Amazon.
Right.
But we'd have to study the different scenarios, and it would be up to you during the site plan process and during the secret process to determine what the appropriate
And I'd
level
be
of use is.
curious, up county a bit where the Amazon warehouse went in off of Sawmill River Road, what kind of, having some kind of comparison of the impacts that had.
On the other hand, about 10 years ago, when we had the Jefferson proposal, people, there was a proposed development for housing in the Ardsley School District. The community went ballistic because they didn't want to, they were concerned about all the additional traffic, the impact to the schools. So although there's negatives and positives with anything, your proposal doesn't have any kids, no impact to the schools, revenue to the school district, but again, and less traffic, but you do have the truck traffic that would be a quality of life issue.
Just one more quick comment on the truck traffic, though, understanding, referencing the village of Ardsley and the downtown area that's there, the interstate access points where you pick up 87, it's before you enter Ashford Avenue and the Ardsley Road, in that intersection there. So a majority of the truck traffic stays south of that. And then knowing that on-ramp, off-ramp, it's limited to one direction. You can't get to all directions of the thruway from that ramp. It's really south is the direction that you go on Sawmill River Road, and you pick it up near Tuckahoe Road. So it's both directions where traffic could get split, but it's not going through the downtown village, theoretically.
Well, you do have some issues, but I will let my colleague who's been
No, it's
wanting
okay.
to say
Understood.
something.
They will.
After 6 times, I give up.
I'm sorry, Francis, I didn't see you.
So when you met with DOT,
Preliminary conversations.
I understand,
yeah.
but I'm sure you didn't say, we have no idea what the use is going to be because we don't have a tenant yet.
Correct, we
And
did.
That's what you did?
100%.
So it's a useless
Because we
meeting.
don't.
Right,
It's-
because what I was going to ask you a while ago was, would you characterize your meeting with DOT as positive,
Positive.
negative, or just neutral?
100% positive in the sense of the feedback that we received relative to a warehouse use on this property with the potential improvements that need to be done, as far as having conversations with them regarding the truck traffic up and down Sawmill River Road. So I would say we took positive steps in that direction, and we did speak to them about the use, but not a specific tenant, because we simply don't know right now. And they know more than anybody else, because obviously a majority of these facilities are on state highways because of the proximity to the thruways and the interstates. They deal with these on a regular basis and understand the potential flexibility or fluctuation in the traffic generation associated with it.
So, and DOT did not say to you, is this envisioned to be warehouse storage versus warehouse local delivery for an Amazon type?
Again, I can't emphasize this enough, how early we are in the process. We had preliminary conversations with DOT. We did not file a formal application with them for the property. And if and when we do, if we get to that point, it's required to have a traffic study associated with it, and that traffic study is going to have trip generation, which is going to be based on a more specific use, whether it is that high turnover or not.
Just one thing, if we just kind of pause and step back, that the early discussions with the DOT were based on some assumptions and some assumed traffic limits. So it wasn't.
Which are?
Which were consistent with a warehouse use. So
What
that's.
type of warehouse? There's lots of different types of warehouse use. There's the Amazon local delivery, there's the Amazon, it's just stored there and truckload.
So the initial conversations were not, it was not a level of traffic that was associated with one of those more intensive warehouse uses. And I think the other thing to remember there is that a condition of our approval, if we were to move forward with this project, would be that we maintain consistency with that contemplated use. So in other words, we couldn't get a project approved with a lighter traffic load and then switch it
Jared, could
halfway
you-
through.
So if you could just, Paul, please.
Yeah.
So if you have a site plan, conceptual,
Yes.
early,
Yes.
what's the largest length of truck that you have designed this for with a turn radius?
That's a WB67. That's your full-size 53-foot trailer, tractor trailer. It's designed for a full-size tractor trailer.
Okay. And for that size vehicle, have you done any site distance determinations? Because one of the things I really don't like about these types of work sessions is we really don't get anything in advance most of the time. And so here, we're just, trying to figure out, and I wish you would have been able to finish your presentation so that we could just then ask you questions about it. But this is informative as well. But at what point are we going to get something that we could actually look at, as opposed to, hey, here you are? Are you asking us today to say, hey, rah, 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 go ahead? Or you're just saying, hey, by the way, this is what we're thinking of, and we say, well, okay, good luck to you, see what the DOT says. I think the DOT is going to have a major fingerprint on the scale here.
100%,
right? Because they could actually say no, right? They could say no left turns, and are you prepared, if there are no left turns, to still go forward with this?
Again, without the left turns, it's not a viable project.
Okay, so the
So,
answer is you're
but
not gonna
again,
go forward.
based on our preliminary conversations with them, with the discussion of a warehouse use on the property, that's it, and the fact of the improvements that would be necessary at the main driveway, to the point of the proximity from this driveway to the 87 interchange to the south of us, all of those things were discussed at a preliminary level. And again, we felt it was positive and we headed in the right direction. And I think that's why we're before you today, because we did receive that positive feedback from the DOT.
I had a question for
As
Garrett.
far as
I
just want to finish this
Yeah.
out, and then I'll be quiet.
But
DOT, right, on West Hartsdale Avenue, two-lane road, nothing like the traffic that's on 9A, wouldn't allow a development on West Hartsdale Avenue, not too far from Four Corners. They would not allow a left out. So the fact that the possibility of them saying you can't make a left out is not insignificant. And secondly, if it is, this project's dead, you're not going forward, you say, it would seem like you'd want to work that out early on. Otherwise, you're increasing billable hours, and frankly, you're getting the community involved in something that's not going to happen.
So I think, and I think we need to maybe provide some additional information. Again, there's information that's been discussed with the DOT. We're at a point where we believe it's viable. Otherwise, we would have recommended long before those billable hours to Biomed that we shouldn't move forward at this point. We've had those initial conversations with him. We believe it's a viable stage. I think what we're trying to understand from the town board this evening is what are the concerns? Obviously, traffic is one of them, 100%. That's clear and upfront and foremost with the truck traffic. And I think we're going to go back and develop supplemental information. It was more about understanding the use on this property. If we are able to overcome the DOT hurdles, which I believe we are able to do so based on the conversations we had, and maybe we need to take it one step further and submit an application to them to show them the proposed improvements. But part of us did not want to go to them formally without presenting something to this board. Now then, DOT sends correspondence to the town, and the town knows nothing about it. It's important that we get the town board members' feedback on the development, the proposed use, and take all that and fold it into a more developed application and a more refined plan.
I had a question
So
for
I think
Garrett.
it's all part of the process.
I had a
That's
question
all.
for Garrett. If we want to put in conditions, let's say it's approved for warehouse, but, we're concerned about the traffic and the hours, what controls does the town board have that, that would give us the ability to address quality of life concerns.
Some of that is illegal.
Some of that.
Some of that is a legal question.
No, but I'm asking from,
deflection.
no, I'm just wondering, is it a basic, if we approve a warehouse and everybody says, oh, by the way, it's a warehouse, but there's not going to be a lot of traffic and we're going to keep the traffic minimal, after the warehouse is approved, could, a year later, could they come back and say, oh, you approved the warehouse, sorry, we got a larger tenant, and then, all the promises that were made aren't kept, or do we have some controls?
Yeah, I mean, look, if there's even the prospect of our desire to sign a lease with a last mile fulfillment center, it behooves everyone in the process, state, town, applicant, prospective, tenant, to study that and study that fulfillment center impacts to see if indeed it can be acceptable and mitigated properly. If there's not the intent to do that or the prospect to do that, conceivably, yeah, the applicant can study what it felt would be the most intense use. And I do believe the town board, through a seeker process, a site plan process, could condition 100%. A non-fulfillment center use if that's all that was really studied. So I do think you would reserve that right. I would imagine these sophisticated folks don't want to come back to the board twice. So again, it's as simple as if there's that prospect, one would expect the application to fully study that.
The other suggestion that I have, just from listening to this presentation, is obviously there's going to be a lot of interest in this proposed, development, because it impacts unincorporated Greenburgh, Ardsley, and Hastings, especially. Would it make sense, and this is just sort of, because I remember one of the biggest controversies we had years ago was the Jefferson proposal. And there was a proposal to build housing, and, the school district freaked out, the neighborhood, they got petitions going.
Right. Paul,
No.
Cizik, if I remove your screen sharing, it's because we've been looking at this same image for about 20
Okay,
minutes.
I'm not.
No, I'm not talking about you, Paul.
No, but I didn't finish my
I
question.
understand. I'm not talking about you.
Talking about what's going on the
Right.
screen.
So when it's time to re-show the image.
He's right there.
Oh,
He's right here. He just.
why are you doing that?
I.
But for a reason.
Okay,
Okay.
the question I had is, would it make sense, just from from a strategy point, to provide, to have like a meeting with the community, to basically say, these are, we own the land. Right now, the land is vacant. These are options that warehouse is one. These are the pluses, these are the minuses. Option two, we could have mixed-use housing. This is the impact it's going to have on the school district, this is the impact it's going to have on traffic and all that. Give the community 2 or 3 different options, and then it may turn out that then the community will be supportive of, it will make it easier for you to get to the end game, because everybody will be part of the process. I know when we had, where Regeneron is, that took years. There were a lot of proposals, and finally everybody agreed, and then it went like that. It went pretty quickly. Right. And I sort of think people have to realize, no matter what we propose there or do there, there's going to be some community concerns, no matter what. So we have to take the best possible option for the community.
Well, going back to one of my first questions, which was why warehouse? What is it that made you determine that was the best usage?
So we could talk about that. I mean, I think one of the other things too, to your point, Paul, is that the site is, the as of right density on the site is roughly 600,000 square feet. So while today we only have somewhere on the order of 200,000 plus of R&D space, of lab space, we'd have the ability to build 600,000 square feet. And I think that goes back to one of Diego's comments about the traffic impact and how it's actually less than what we would see if the buildings were occupied today, and obviously substantially less than what we would see if we were to build out the full 600,000 square feet of lab or office. With that said, lab or office are, neither use is viable. The rents are too low, the construction costs are too high, the cost to renovate the existing buildings is too high, and quite frankly, the demand is practically non-existent. So this is really one of the best, given the construction costs, the site work costs on the site, which are pretty high given the steep slopes. This is the one use.
Right,
Yeah, we were
from
able
a
to find.
business standpoint, not necessarily a neighborhood standpoint,
Well,
but
no, I know,
yeah.
yeah.
But with caveats. And the other, just one other thing that I wanted to say is that I think there will be an impact going north towards Ardsley.
Through Ardsley, yeah.
I think that at least trucks coming off of the highway, right? They can't get on from there, but they can get off. They have to go further to get on. So that poses a problem. It misses the bridge traffic to some extent, but it still can mess up that bridge traffic. And there is a lot of traffic there in the AM
I mean,
during rush hour.
the big plus is that this is a concept stage right now. So the
Absolutely,
thing is,
yes.
if you haven't, designed anything right now, and you'd consider, my suggestion by coming up with a couple different alternatives, we have a couple meetings with the community, we get community feedback, then I think, while you're coming up with, more detailed plans, you'll have sort of an idea, what will, what could be approved, what the villages and residents, would like. And I think that it could save you a lot of time and money in the long term, because it would be a partnership with the community.
Exactly, and I agree with you completely. Community engagement
Right.
is a hallmark of any good project, right? You need to have that community input. Obviously, we didn't want to go to the community before we came to you, similar to proceeding any further with the DOT. We wanted to make sure that you were aware of what we were thinking about for the site. Again, stressing that this is at a conceptual level. This has not been fully designed. We wanted to seek your input as we're, formulating our plans so that we can fold that in.
And I think it's terrific.
I
I think this is really a fantastic initial action step from your company, because basically you're being transparent. You're not ramming anything down anybody. Saying we have to do this, and it gives everybody time to digest, and we could have some give and take, and then if everybody works together in partnership, we'll come up with a plan that we feel will be the best use for that property for everybody. So I really want to say, I really appreciate, the way you're handling this, and I feel that all developers, if they came in at the concept stage, it would be great.
Yeah, partnership is exactly what we're
So
looking
now
for
if
here.
we
We
could
wanna work
actually
in
finish the
partnership with you and the
presentation, you can
community.
share.
You sure? But just before, on a point of clarity, I just want to make sure, because I heard preparing the alternatives for comparative analysis standpoint for looking how these two would compare is understandable, but I just want to make sure certain that everybody understands the warehouse use is what's being proposed at this location. We can do a comparative analysis to see comparison impacts to, say, multifamily or office, but the applicant has no intention of doing multifamily, obviously. The proposal is to come with a warehouse use.
But let's say.
Happy to
but let's-
look at the alternatives.
But let's say you said, I'm just throwing out, let's say you said this area could have 1,000, multifamily, if people objected to the 500 units or 700 units years ago, so then people will, if you're.
270,
What?
270,
It was 270 units?
272 or something.
Yeah, they went crazy over that. So the thing is, if you give people,
I didn't want
if you
to
have
say
an honest
270.
discussion and give people the options that potentially could work, in concept, I think that you may end up getting to the place that you basically want. If you're saying it has to be this, then people may object. People have to realize you have a right to use your property, and you have a right to develop the property. And, and again, if you're giving the community early on different options, then maybe it could be, maybe it will be a little different, maybe some warehouse, maybe something else. Maybe there's compromise ideas that people would be happy with, I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, we appreciate the feedback that we've received tonight. This is exactly, what we were looking for, full, frank, honest questions and feedback. So this is very helpful to us as we go back and determine next steps and try to work your feedback
we're
into
good,
our
yeah.
proposed project. We absolutely appreciate it. I don't know if, Sal, did you have anything else that you wanted to?
No, I think we covered. No, I agree. We had a few more slides, but the last one was going to be a Q&A, and I think we covered a lot of questions and answers. So
We do.
That one.
we jumped ahead, yeah, a little bit.
But I would like to see what the other slides are.
Certainly, yeah.
Sure.
So-
Want to share that, Paul?
And can you send us the PowerPoint?
Right, that would be helpful.
At this point, yeah, we could talk about sending the power, because it is so conceptual at this point, and it's not a proposed project. We'd prefer to not have hard copies of the PowerPoint, but we can share the rest of the slides on the screen here tonight, and obviously this is being recorded and can be referred back to.
So the next two slides are renderings. The project architect did start looking at the building design and some view sheds of what it would look like from the roadway, obviously. So the next two slides are just some preliminary and conceptual renderings of what you would see from the roadway itself. The building set back, sits at a slightly higher elevation. You have a driveway directly in front of it. And this is as if you're standing or just off of Sawmill River Road itself. So that would be one of the views that looks directly in that location as well.
That's a sidewalk over there?
Where? That's a driveway along the, so if you go back to the site plan, what you would see is that driveway that runs parallel to the building itself. That's what you're seeing. You're looking at the two corners of the building on the northern and southern portions of the property there. So you're seeing the driveway. You're not seeing any of the sidewalk improvements.
You would do a sidewalk?
Well, that would be something that would be discussed, but understanding the community and working in Greenburgh, it's something that gets incorporated into pretty much every project we do. So we understand that that would be a component that would be incorporated into the plan, but that's not shown on this rendering here. I don't want that to be perceived as a sidewalk. That is a driveway. Okay.
I like
Next
the
slide.
landscaping.
And then back, Sal, just to wrap up, I guess.
So just to recap, I think the tax revenue is probably the focus. We don't see much of a path forward with the existing buildings, and so hopefully there's a solution that benefits everyone and increases the tax revenue, which is what we think this one is. Again, the comment on significant reduction in peak hour traffic is as compared to a fully occupied existing use. Obviously, no impact to schools, an opportunity to eliminate these ancient buildings and replace them with something that's more energy efficient, new, fresh, new landscaping, sidewalks, all those things.
How old when was the buildings built?
Oh my God, those buildings were built at least.
50s?
It's a good question. I was going to say the 50s at least
Or
in the
60s.
50s. They're all concrete. They're dinosaurs, I guess, in terms of lab buildings, life science buildings. And then the opportunity to create some permanent jobs for the area, and then whatever future services come out of the building. So, and then we get to the Q&A slide, I believe, right after.
Did Accorda move, or did they,
Accorda consolidated. They were struggling for a while, and they ended up really exiting this site, consolidating to another location that they had. So that's it.
I got one question or
Yes.
comment. So
Bring the microphone closer, Garrett.
as you develop this concept and if you do work your way towards a formal application, the comprehensive plan, when it was adopted in 2016, did envision, thriving life science R&D sector. I believe, I'm sure you've taken a peek at that section of the code. And you touched on this in the beginning of your presentation about the market and the mere fact that Accord is no longer there. But I do think as part of an application, you would really want to just get in a bit about market dynamics, get into it a bit with market dynamics, and really rationalize how that vision, while aspiring, isn't realistic with where we're at today or for the foreseeable future, just so the town board could really understand, what's changed since then.
If Regeneron, like every, couple of weeks is expanding practically, would Regeneron or any other if you demolish the buildings, would any other companies be interested in possibly, redeveloping on that site?
So where Regeneron was, their campus was previously ours. We sold it a number of years ago, probably about 7 years ago. And as everyone knows here, Regeneron has a lot of expansion capacity in their existing campus. So we don't see a point in time where they will need,
Or anybody else?
or anyone else. I think we've been searching for the anyone else now for the better part of 5 years, and they haven't showed up yet. So, yeah.
I think if Biomed had its way, it would love to, release
Right.
this to it.
I mean,
that's their business.
it is
the
what
life
we do.
science
Yes,
business.
absolutely.
So that would be, right within their wheelhouse, so to speak. But,
Correct.
the market just isn't there, I think is what we're experiencing.
Right, right. I mean, the market has shifted dramatically nationwide in the last year, and that's just a fact that is going to make it more difficult here.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time tonight. Very much appreciated.